All right, thanks for joining us. We've had some new people joining us, and my name is Antoni Cimolino, and I'm here interviewing Stephen Ouimette and Tom Rooney, and we're talking about comedy and the use of comedy in All's Well That Ends Well. So let's dive in and at least try to give a basic description of the plot, because it's not a play that's extremely well known, but it's okay. I'll start. You jump in. It's about a physician's daughter. The physician is brilliant. Unfortunately, he dies. It's the old physician, heal thyself. And she is adopted by a countess, an count in the country, who the physician worked for. She makes the mistake of falling in love with their son, which is delicate in terms of the issues there. You work for that and were a favorite of that count, who's now also passed away. The son that she's fallen in love with is now going to go to the court of the king.
His father has also died.
Right.
So he's going to be a ward of the king.
So he goes to live with the king, and the king is sick. The king is about to die. And Helen, the daughter, the physician's daughter, goes and follows the boy to Paris and manages to cure the king. And the king was, determined to be terminally ill by his doctors. That's probably enough for us to get going on without getting into much more detail. There's a great question here, Stephen and Tom, about the role of clowns in these plays. Are they intended simply as being comic relief, or are they, I think the phrase is blameless social commentators who can poke and prod at issues and make us think?
Well, I think if they're done properly, they do both those things. They make us laugh, but they also make us think. And these plays are not short plays, and to go that long without laughs, even the great tragedies have comic moments and are intended to, I believe. So yeah, I think if it's done properly, it'll make us laugh, but there's also something. Comedy just doesn't happen without any logic behind it. It has to have a full, fleshed out backstory, and the more that is true, the funnier it will be. The real laughter, in my opinion, is laughter of recognition. Is when people understand who that is and why that person's saying that. Makes it way more funny than just doing a funny walk and,
And when you're not getting certain key recognition laughs, as you're saying, as a director, when I watch that, I realize the audience isn't quite following the storyline, or they don't understand the situation or the character properly. It's not about the funny walk. It's about them following the narrative.
I don't think those characters should be. You shouldn't try to be funny. You should try. That should be the last thing on your mind.
Right? Yeah, we were talking this afternoon a little bit about the difference between clowns and fools in Shakespeare, because sometimes they're referred to as fools and sometimes as clowns. And a fool is someone who is generally allowed in the court, and works in the court, works for the king or the queen, and is allowed to say certain things, and knows what he is saying, generally, I think. Whereas a clown often works in the country, as we were saying, works in the stables, or like the clowns in Winter's Tale, they're shepherds, and often they don't know that they're speaking truth or that they're being funny or witty. That's just who they are, and we laugh, as you say, at the person, right. Not necessarily what they say.
But Lavatch is a crossover.
He is, yeah,
because he's a person of lower status with a trade, but also understands everything.
Yes, he's saying. And he goes between. He is sent to the court at one point, so he does walk in that circle as well. Mm-hmm. And I am using a funny walk, actually.
There you go.
Oh yeah, well let's forget all those things we said about funny walks. Are perfectly acceptable. Very good. And the other thing about Lavatch is that he's not afraid to kind of say the seemingly wrong thing. Your son will not die so soon as I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
Well, and the great thing about those characters is often they have nothing to lose.
Right.
And so they can say, they do speak the truth, because they're the lowest of the low anyway.
And that's part of the reason that people want them around, because they do speak the truth. You're not surrounded by people who will say whatever you want to hear. There's somebody that's actually going to speak the truth.
Well, both of these guys do, in a way. Because you are in your situation as senior lawyer where you don't have to suck up to anybody.
Right.
And Pearl is, who is the figure of fun in the play, who dresses up and wants to be very, very important. You kind of call him pretty early on. For a while there, you believe that he might have more to him than.
Sure, but I think that's part of what the play's trying to say is that there is wisdom and grace in older age, and the young people sometimes have to make their own mistakes, but shouldn't, you know, in a way it's tough love what he does. He just calls him out and says, you are a phony person. And by the end of the play, he's letting him, after he's been disgraced, bringing him into his house in complete forgiveness. So it's, you know, the amount of humanity that's in those older characters is pretty astonishing.
It's funny, the interconnection on that same subject between the two of you. There's a couple of delightful moments when you say, in saying to Parolles, you know, I'm on to you now, you say, I have found thee. And then he internalizes that. Obviously, it's pretty painful when you leave. The next thing you know, you come on stage, and he says to you, I have found thee. Mm-hmm. And you say, did
you find me in yourself, sir, or were you taught to find me?
Amazing kind of understanding that it didn't come from him.
Yes, yeah, exactly, and it stumps him. He has no answer to that.
So it's calling a spade a spade.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, we've had some great thoughts about the play. And let's begin with Helen, who's a really remarkable character in her own way. She's resilient. I mean, you know, she knows what she wants, and boy, does she go after it. And she is, I think she has a hard time, obviously, dealing with the fact that she might have disappointed the Countess by falling in love with her son, but she never gives up on that. Now, you've got a kind of interesting relationship with her. Both of you men speak very highly of her after people think that she's dead. Tom, do you think your character is in love with Helen?
I think, you know, he sings this song about Helen of Troy. When Helen is mentioned to him the first time, he sings this song about Helen of Troy. And the chorus is, among nine bad if one be good. And he switched that around. And so I think for Lavatch, Helen is his hope. She's the last good person, I think, in Lavatch's life. And she's the one that he pins the goodness of humanity on, if you will. So I think he is in love with her, but it's much bigger than a simple human or man-woman love.
You know, marriage keeps coming up in this play. I mean, obviously, Helen wants to be married. It's the driving force behind the play. But we don't see other marriages. Marriage comes up for you because you say, right at the first scene, you know, madam, you say, I'm going to have to get married.
Yes.
Later on at the end of the play, we find out you have a daughter that you want to marry. This whole idea of preparing for the future. But why do you think marriage comes up with Lavatch? Is it top of mind at that point? Or?
You know, I think often Lavatch is tuned in. There's some sixth or seventh or eighth sense that he's working on. And that he's tuned into what's going on, and he knows what's going on with Helen, and so I feel that he is joining in on that and commenting on that. I don't even know if there is an Isabel. You know, I don't even know, or if there is an Isabel, if she actually knows that he exists or not.
Right.
You know, but he uses this person to sort of send that message and bring that flavor into the world.
Stephen, you've done so many plays of Shakespeare. Why in a play that marriage keeps on coming up, that, you know, the king's wife is not present, that the countess no longer has a husband, you don't see, in a generational change, you don't see a lot of examples of older, you know, the lady in Florence is a widow. He doesn't give you functioning couples in this.
Most of the older couples in the play you never see their other half. They're either dead or not mentioned. The king's wife presumably is dead. But the absent partner is where's Mrs. Lear?
Right.
There's no Mrs. Timon of Athens. Like that's a popular thing with him. It's somebody on their own, and it gives, I think, the men in the play license. Everybody's attracted to Helen. All the men.
Right.
Lafew, Lavatch, the king.
Dr.
That's
She.
how he gets her in. Lafew appeals to the king's kind of prurient interest in this woman. And that's how he actually gets her in to see him. So and the king's a bit smitten with her. Everybody is. Yeah. And I think that's the big irony. All those guys want to marry her except Bertram.
Yes. Poor Bertram.
She could have anybody in the world, and she chooses Bertram.
And he doesn't even get a soliloquy.
No.